The Binding of Isaac just received a major update, a big enough update to call it Repentance Plus, and today I'm gonna tier list the item changes and rebalances. Now I know this isn't a huge deal for a lot of people that watch my channel. I usually do a lot of stuff on movies and anime, but here we are. This is one of my favorite video games of all time. I have over 1,000 hours in this game, so I just wanted to nerd out for a minute here and just look at all of the rebalances. This is gonna be the first time that I actually read most of these changes, so yeah, this is kind of like a live reaction to it also. Anyway, let's jump right into it. The first item we have here is Tammy's head. This is a cool active item. You press the space bar, you shoot your tears in every direction. It's pretty solid. It was already an item that I would pick up sometimes based off of synergies, or if I just didn't have an active item, it was a fine one to see. However, the update gives it a buff. It reduces the duration of the animation so that Isaac can fire more quickly after use. I mean, this is a fine buff. It's not a great buff because it doesn't really do that much for the item, but it's a fine buff. It's an item I'm already picking up, and it's just being better now, so I like it. Next, we have Mishap, and this is an active item that I already never gave a shit about. I mean, this is just not a very good item. You press the space bar, and Isaac pees a little bit, and that's it. If I don't have an item, I'm picking it up. But if I do have an active item, this is almost never overriding my current active item. The buff is that it makes the pee a little bit bigger. Also, it stays until Isaac leaves instead of just sticking around for like 3 seconds. It's just little to no change. I mean, it's a little bit better for like boss items. Actually, it's a lot better for bosses. I guess it'll be a guess I take. The next one we have here is the Mega Bean. This is another active item. Honestly, this is a pretty good active item. I'd put it around the same tier as the Tammy's head because it's just doing a burst of damage and it poisons things. It's a good item. It's overall just a solid item. I'm not taking it over any good utility active item. The buff is it creates a catastrophic fart that sweeps the entire room. So instead of like a smaller radius, it sweeps the entire room, poisoning everything on the screen. It's definitely a better item now. Guess I'll take. Although with that being said, it is a solid item because it does the earthquake thing. It's really little to no change. I don't think it doing the whole room instead of just the little radius. It's already just a fine item. It's really little to no change. Also, I don't know why this D tier is here. I'm gonna get rid of it. Now, next we have Milk, the first passive item we're talking about, and I like passive items more than active items because you can only have one active item at a time, unless you have School Bag, but like whatever. And this item definitely needed a buff. Typically, it was a little floating piece of milk. Ain't nobody in the world said piece of milk before. It's a little floating cup of milk that if Isaac gets hit, he drops the milk and it puts a little lemon mishap type puddle around him that damages things, but also increases his fire rate. I think it was for the room. The buff is that it stays for the whole floor. To be honest, this item's just very different because the buff doesn't only make it last for the whole floor, it also blocks shots now. After 10 hits, it breaks and then gives Isaac a pretty big tears upgrade for the whole floor. Now this kind of feels like a great buff. I mean, this was always a quality 1 item. Like, I guess I'll take this, but it's probably not going to impact the run at all, but this actually sounds like it might impact the run a lot more. Maybe preserve a little bit of Devil Deal chance, a real DPS upgrade for the whole floor. Next, we have Delirious. This is another active item. It's always one that I don't feel great having, kind of just like a High Priestess card. It's just a mass of boss damage. It summons a boss. It just stays for the room. Yeah, I mean, it's a boss killing item. The item now summoned bosses. They persist throughout rooms, so you can actually keep it for the whole floor until it dies. And the charge is now different based on the quality of the previously summoned boss. So it kind of works how a blank card works. Its charge is different based on how good the last thing was. So, I mean, yeah, it's a fine buff. I mean, it's actually usable. You can now use it kind of like a Mega Mushroom that's way worse, but still, it goes throughout rooms, so you can use it to clear out a lot of rooms along the way. Still an item I'm not going to be very excited to see in the Angel Room, but it's better. Next, we have Jar of Wisps, which honestly, it's one of my least favorite active items to see. I mean, mostly because when you see it in the Angel Room. Same with the Delirious. When you see it, man, it could be a Sacred Heart. It could even be just like an okay item, like a Guardian Angel or something. But here it is, Jar of Wisps. All it does is it's an active item that continuously compounds Wisps, orbitals. I get into an Angel Room, see it, don't have an active item, I'm picking it up. However, the buff is it's reduced to a 6-room charge, allowing them to stack up much more quickly. I mean, it's fine. it feels like it's just a fine buff, but it's still gonna continue to be a guess I'll take. Just mostly due to the dense quality of powerful items in the Angel Room pool. You're still gonna see that item. I guess I'll take it. And if you have a good active item already, you're probably still never taking this item. I guess maybe that my opinion will change if I get like an early jar of Wisps in a run without like a good active item. It might be a game changer, but for now, yeah, I mean, it's a guess I'll take. Also, let me tell you that with this ranking system, this is not how good each of these items are, because Mega Bean is probably the best item that we've talked about so far. This is purely talking about the quality of buff or like item balance, not the item itself. Next, we have Abyss, and we're in active item hell right now. It's not very good. It's like a void that instead eats something and gives you a locust. This is a starting item for Tainted Apollyon, which is cool because it's actually a pretty good starting item for that character. But usually when I find this, I'm never really ecstatic about it. There's not a lot of items that I like to void for Wisp. It's really just active items, you know? Most of the time, I'll take a mid-power passive item over killing it off for a red Wisp. This buff actually seems incredible. Item quality now impacts the damage of the summoned Locust. Locusts now inherit many different effects based on the item destroyed by Abyss. Now, this sounds like a great buff. I haven't seen this in practice yet. It might not be that big of a deal. From hearing it, if you Abyss a good item, you get a good buff. That sounds really interesting, and that makes me want to play a Tainted Apollyon run right now, I'm not gonna lie. Next, we got Flip, and this is an interesting change because it's actually not the item. The change is only for Tainted Lazarus, who opens with this item. It's a really good item. It lets you go into a treasure room or shop or a devil deal / angel deal. You can get 2 items. You just have to have an active charge. It basically doubles your items from most special rooms. It's like a very, very good item. It's quality 4. It didn't really need a buff, and that's why they didn't buff it. They just buffed it from the character that starts with it, because that character is weird, and it's actually 2 characters. So when, you know, you get 2 items, you're actually just getting 1 item on both playable characters. Yeah, I mean, it's a great buff for that character. It makes me want to play the character right now, actually. So that definitely deserves great buff. Next, we have Portable Slot, and this is a terrible item, just genuinely. I mean, I barely ever use them. I really only use them like womb onwards if I have a ton of money or like deep pockets or something. You press the space bar and it activates the lottery machine, pay 1 cent, and then you get a random pickup or nothing. What is the upgrade? Removed from the shop pool, added as a possible reward from slot machines. I actually really like that buff. That's a great buff. Every time I see it in the shop, I'm like, wow, that sucks. It's nothing. But using it as a possible reward at the end of a lottery machine, it's actually really good because you can use the card that summons one in like a secret room to get a pedestal to re-roll it. You find one of those rare secret rooms that has like 2 fortune tellers and 3 lottery machines. You just run your head into it and then you get a couple of pedestals. That could be massive for like an Isaac run, or even just if you have like a dice charge or a Perth row, that could be huge. This is actually a phenomenal buff. I mean, this is a phenomenal buff, actually. Making it a reward at the end of lottery machines, I love this buff. Now we have Void. Not even really fair to call it a quality 4 item. If you look at quality 4 items, this is one that's like, really? It's okay. It's another active item. You press the space bar. You very much so like Abyss. I mean, obviously, look at the sprites. They look the same. It eats the active item, and it gives you an active item, and they stack. Or if you eat a passive item, it gives you a buff to a random stat or 2. The change cooldown, it went from 6 rooms to 4. So it's a 4-room recharge now, which is a lot better. Something like a Satanic Bible. Or say you start with Isaac and you find this in the Devil Room pool, take the Void and void your own D6. That's a genuine buff to the D6, and that's actually really good. It really is a great buff. Yeah, I mean, turning D6 into a 4-room is like, brother, I'm gonna break every single run. Like, that is crazy strong. All right, I think we're out of active item hell. I don't know why they put milk at the top of this one, because other than milk, it's all active items. Like, oops, all active items right now. But now we're in passive items town, so yeah. Next, we have Epiphora. If you had rock bottom, this item was great. You hold in any direction, and it upgrades your tiers as you're holding, as long as you're holding that way. If that sounded weird, that's fair. It sounded weird when I was saying it. Anyway, let's see the buff. The tiers upgrade from firing in a single direction is a smooth increase, instead of being a staggered every few seconds. Now this, to me right now, just reading it, seems like little to no change. So I'm gonna say little to no change. Anyway, next we have God's Flesh. This is a really terrible item. You have like a small chance to shoot one of the different tiers. If you hit something with it, it turns them small and you can walk over them to beat them. Yeah, it's bad. Let's see the upgrade. Double the chance of shrink tiers firing. That's good. Shrunken enemies now briefly flash white before growing back. That's good because sometimes you would go to walk over them and they would just grow back to size like immediately and you would take damage, and that sucks. Enemies that explode fire shots or summon minions on death and don't hurt Isaac. So this is definitely a good buff overall for the item. The item is still bad. It's still an item that it's like, I guess I'll take. You know what? It's a fine buff. It probably isn't enough to even bring it up to a quality 2 in my brain. It is a fine buff. It is genuinely a good buff. Next we got Hushy, and oh my goodness, what a bad item. It's a little friend, does the VHS, like jump around, and whenever you start firing, he stays in that place. So it's good for a few random like stationary bosses. Think your Mama Gertie, you know, think Hush. It can like just sit on that guy and do some damage. Now it also fires sporadically. That's the buff. I like it a lot. Dude, it's still a little Hushy. It's not gonna change. Like, this is a bad item. It's still gonna be bad. Like, it's a good buff, but it's really no change. Like, it doesn't make me want the item anymore. But actually it does. I lied. It's actually a guess I'll take, because it's like, yeah, I guess. I just realized that these tiers don't make a ton of sense, like the guess I'll take, but whatever. Next we have It Hurts. So this is a passive item. It's an on-hit item. I don't really love on-hit items, but oh well. When you take damage, it fires a ring of tears around you, much like the Tammy's head, but on hit instead of an active item. Yeah, it's not very good. So let's see what the buff is. After taking damage, Isaac tears will now leave behind small pools of creep. All right, I mean, that's a good buff. It's a fine buff. It was already an item that I was be like, okay, like sure, right? I mean, the aim is to not get hit, but when you do get hit, firing off a Tammy's head with some blood creep. All right, next we have Mars, and I'm glad this item is getting a buff, because finding this item in the planetarium pool is like such a giant flick you off, because it feels so great to see a planetarium and then you go in and it's Mars and you're like, free curse rooms. That's really all the item does, at the cost of occasionally just taking damage. I'm like a pretty spastic player. Like, I move a lot. Double tap and then it shoots you in a direction with Invuln. In addition to being invulnerable when charging, Isaac will gain a 1-second bubble of Invuln after the charge. Hitting obstacles also causes a knockback effect to clear any threats from the surrounding area. So that's good. They're really trying to fix like the miss inputs. Currently that sounds like a fine buff. It sounds not super great, but I'm sure in playing, in practicality use, it will feel better. I'm sure it will. Next we have Evil Charm, which is a genuinely solid item. +2 luck, immune to burn, confusion, fear, and toxic gas. Now the biggest downside of this item is that it's in a secret room pool, re-rolling the secret room, and then you get Evil Charm as the last one, and it's like, all right, my chances of getting chests in the chest. Yeah, it might be nice if you have like an Athame run going on, but yeah, overall, it's not that great. It's just a +2 luck. Let's see the buff. Isaac now gains immunity to spiderweb slowdown, flame attacks, fireplaces, and poison mushrooms. That's actually pretty cool, because poison mushrooms are really annoying, especially when you have Stompy, because you just want to run over every single mushroom and you just take damage. Isaac can also stand in enemy creep for 1 second before taking damage. Okay, so this is a genuine buff, actually good, fine buff. Almost feels like a great buff. Like I said, I mean, I barely felt its after effects other than the +2 luck typically anyway. So now these are all notable. This is actually a very good buff for it. I'm gonna put it in fine buff, not great buff, because it doesn't make me like super excited to see it. But yeah, this is definitely a good buff. Vasculitis. This guy's a pretty okay item. When you kill an enemy, it shoots out tears. The biggest downside is that when you do that, they're hard to differentiate. Run into other tears thinking you're Vasculitis, or you kill something, it shoots out tears, and you just like play weird and dodge attacks that aren't going to hit you. Friendly radial shots fired after killing an enemy will now appear as blood clots to more easily distinguish them. Okay, so that's cool. I mean, like I said, the downside is that it's hard to differentiate. The buff is that it makes it easier to differentiate. I mean, as far as like the buff for that, it couldn't really have gotten any better. Next we have Lil Portal, and this is a weird item. It's like a familiar that if it hits a guy, it creates a portal to a random room. I'm reading this, and the first part of this has been completely reworked. So this is a brand new item essentially. Double tapping a fire button now is required to launch the Lil Portal, so that's cool. He doesn't randomly fire, which is cool. And after it has consumed enough items, the room is clear. A single portal will spawn and the familiar will now disappear for the remainder of the floor. Entering this portal now takes Isaac to a room where he can pick up or drop off items. What? Where he can pick up or drop off items? This room persists throughout the rest of the current run. Okay, hold on. Hold on. This creates like a pocket dimension where you can pick up and drop off items. I don't know what that means really. If that means what I think it is, this sounds like quite the hell of a rigging item. And I genuinely, I need to see it in action. I'm not gonna lie, I need to see this one in action. This is hard to gauge for right now. I can't put it in little to no change. It feels like I can't really put it in guess I'll take. I'm gonna put it in great buff because if this works how I think it works in my head, that is a busted item for any run that has rerolls. Say it in the comments down below if you got the Lil Portal in the last day, because I want to know how that works. Because like, what pool of items does it go if you reroll them? Can you store, is it like essentially like a weird school bag that you can use? You can put down an active item in there and then you can go into it at any time during the run. Yeah, I mean, this was a bad item before. It was never an item that I was like, yeah. It was an item that I was like, yeah. Anyway, next we have Linger Bean, and this is an item that people have been wanting to buff forever. I mean, tell me what this item does. You're being quizzed. Tell me what this item does. It leaves a little fart cloud that you can like push around. It does very negligible damage. But the buff is the fart cloud is now deployed after 4 seconds of continuous fire instead of 7, which is cool. The cloud starts small and potent and will grow and deal reduced damage over the course of 10 seconds. I'm gonna put it here. That just sounds not that good. It does a little bit more damage. It takes a little less time to fire. It's still like a clownable item. Of course, it's Linger Bean, right? Of course, it's Linger Bean. Yeah, bad item. Anyway, next we have Jupiter. Is this the one that you fart like 100 times? I don't know. It is the fart item. Standing still builds up speed, and then when you're walking, you fart and lose that speed. It's a really mid item. Come on, I skipped an item room for this, man. Come on, man, you know? But yeah, anyway, it says now it heals 2 hearts instead of just half. Yeah, sounds like little to no change to me. It still sounds like I'm gonna be sad to see it in the planetarium pool. Next we have Butterbean, which is, it's not very good. You press the button and it does like a little fart, and it takes 3 seconds, and the item, now the recharge time is from 3 seconds to 2. The best thing about this item is when you pick it up and it says, oh, not Butterbean. I thought it was Butterbean, because you can use it to open secret rooms. That's a good item. 3 seconds to 2 seconds feels like little to no change to me, but it's Butterbean, so it's like kind of meant to be like a bum item, right? Because it's just like a funny bad item, haha. Next we have the Bean, which is another genuinely bad item. Can now be reused after 4-second cooldown instead of a room charge. Sure, it's a little poison fart. It's not good. It sounds like little to no change. I guess having it 4 seconds instead of having to clear the room is fine, but it still feels like little to no change, realistic. Next we have Kidney Bean, which once again is a 4-second cooldown instead of a room charge. This one does a like a love fart. That sounded stupid, but it charms enemies is what it does. A charm fart, not a love fart, man. Come on, what is a love fart? Little to no change. Next we have Dead Bird. Once again, just not a big deal. When you get hit, it sends out a little bird that does a little bit of damage. It's like bad familiar that needs being hit first, be active, which is bad. But hey, look at that. The item upgrade is will remain active between rooms as the player is at half a heart. Eve requires 1 full heart. You can have this as just an active thing. That's definitely not little to no change because it can remain active, which is very good. Guess I'll take. Yeah, I mean, it's a fine buff. They didn't really want to make Dead Bird a good item. That's fine. It doesn't really deserve to be a good item. This is a fine buff. It's not really anything big. It's a fine buff. Now, next we have Dataminer, and like, please give me a good buff for Dataminer because this item sucks. If you activate it, it makes the game look weird for the room, but then it gives you a random stat upgrade and a random stat downgrade. This is detrimental to some runs when you get it really early, and it gives you a damage down. I mean, you just hold R when that happens. Like, there's no way you can use this item. And mid to late game, a lot of the time, if you don't have a lot of DPS upgrades, you see this item and it's hard to even want to use it once because the upside is good. Like, yeah, +1 damage, that's awesome. +1 tears, that's awesome. But if you get a plus or like a -1 damage and you've only found like a growth hormones, you're sitting at like 5.17 damage in, you know, depths. You're like, dude, do I want to go back to starting base damage to go into the womb? Like, probably not. Dataminer. The buff. Using Dataminer in a room with an item pedestal will now re-roll it into a glitched item. That is fun. That is a genuinely funny item. Is that a full rework? Does it do what it used to do still also? I don't know. That's a cool buff. Honestly, I'm putting it in great buff. That sounds funny and actually usable. I will probably pick it up in runs and actually just use it the whole run because it'd be funny. It's essentially, if you look at it, it's essentially a TM trainer, is it not? Right? Because you can make every single good item. It's almost better than TM trainer actually, because you can make bad items into glitched items instead of just like every item into a glitched item. That's a great buff. Here we are at the end of all these changes. There are a lot of fixes and there's a handful of trinkets that are changed now. I'm really happy to see these changes. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I do want to do some more content. Like I said, I might do like a bingo video or something here pretty soon. I have a couple friends that said they might be interested in that. That's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and goodbye.